Hello, my name is Alfredo Salmon Mijage from Educare Tanzania. Welcome in this class Form 1 student to proceed with the topic number 3 according to our syllabus. And our topic is so-called the development of economic activities and their impact. So by introduction, let us see the definition of development. And development refers to the progressive changes from low to high standard of living. It means that development, according to our context, is the progressive changes from low to high standard of living. So let us see the different economic activities that will take place in African communities or African societies, by starting with handicraft industries and mining in pre-colonial Africa. It means that handicraft industries and mining in pre-colonial Africa. Handicraft industries, these were industries of which man used the hands and the skills to produce tools and weapons. It means that handicraft industries, these were industries of which man used the hands and skills to produce tools and weapons for different purposes. Industries is the place where raw materials are processed into finished goods. It means that industries is a place where raw materials are processed into finished goods. For example, for the processing of cotton into cloth or clothes are the finished goods. Let us see specialized handicraft industries in Africa included the following. It means that specialized handicraft industry in Africa included the following. The first one was salt making industry, iron working industry, copper mining, gold mining, pottery making, spinning and weaving industries, backcloth industry, and the canoe making industries. These all were industries and mining activities which were taking place in African societies or in Africa, in pre-colonial African societies. By starting with salt making industries, these are industries which engaged in production of salt, not soil, of salt in pre-colonial Africa. In pre-colonial Africa. It means that salt making industries, these were industries which engaged in production of salt in pre-colonial African societies. Let us see the uses of salt. What are the uses of salt, or what the pre-colonial African societies used means what were the uses of the salt during the pre-colonial African societies? To me, that the first one was it used for adding flavor, tasty for the food in the kitchen. To mean that salt used to add the flavor tasty for the food in the kitchen. To mean that to make food have the flavor taste. And another one is it used for preservation of food like fish and meat. To mean that salt was used to preserve food like fish and meat. There's another uses of salt during the pre-colonial African societies. Until now, the salt is used for preservation of food like meat and fish and other food. What were the methods which were used for obtaining salt? Means the following are the methods which were used to obtain salt. The first one, from different leads. It means leads were collected, dried and burned. The ashes would be filtered while the ashes remain liquid would be evaporated and the residue would be used as salt. It means that from different leads, these are just like stones in nature, it means that were collected. Leads were collected, dried and burned. The ashes would be filtered, would be filtered while the ashes remained, liquid would be evaporated and the residue would be used as salt. That was the first method that used to obtain salt during the pre-colonial African societies. Where the places that used such kind of method to obtain that salt. The example near Lake Victoria, Kyoga and Albert. It means that near Lake Victoria, Lake Kyoga and Lake Albert, among Buganda and the Bwaya tribes and among Manganja people near shores of Lake Nyasa. So these were places which were used such kind of method to obtain salt in pre-colonial Africa. But another method which was used to obtain salt was through boiling and evaporating method. Boiling and evaporating method. Sea or ocean water put these pans and left it to evaporate. The salty crystals would be collected and used as salt. It means that they were using boiling and evaporating method, whereby sea or ocean water put in 2 pans and left it to evaporate. The salty crystals would be collected and used as salt. The places which were used such kind of methods are just around coastal areas. It means all areas which are around the coastal areas, like Kilindi, Pwani, Mtwara in southern part of Tanzania. And once we talk on the areas around the coastal region, we mean the areas which are around the ocean or sea, not the lake, because the sea water are the only water which contain the salty nutrients or salty elements. That was number 2, or method number 2 that was used to obtain salt. And the third one was salty mining. To mean that salt was mined underneath rocks. To mean that mining, it means salt mining. Up here, we will see that salt was extracted underneath the rocks. To mean that places which were using such kind of method to obtain salt was Tagaza, Birma, around Lake Chad in West Sudan. Also near Lake Benguela and River Luapala in Central Africa. All these areas were using salt mining to obtain salt for their purpose or for their uses. Another way or method was water by fire. It means water by fire. Spring water containing salt was boiled and final salt was obtained. To mean that spring water that was containing salt was boiled and final salt was obtained. Places which was used such kind of method to obtain salt was Uvinza salt spring along River Malagarasi in Central Africa. It means that you can take examples of Uvinza, which is along River Malagarasi in Central Africa. That was the example of area that used the water by fire method to obtain salt. What were the uses of salt? It means salt used as ingredient in cookery or in cooking activities. Also food preservation. It means salt used for food preservation. Also it is used as a medicine that on freshly cut wounds. You can use salt to be used. You can use salt as medicine. For example, on the freshly cut wounds, you can apply salt there in order to treat that wound. Also, It was used as a medium of exchange or trade exchange. It means during the pre-colonial African societies, they used salt as a medium of exchange. For example, the society which were producing salt exchange salt with other products or items like food crops or animals or meats and whatever. So that was used as the medium of exchange. But another was animal hides were cured using salt before used to make cloth. It means that animal hides or animal skins were cured using salt before used to make clothes or clothes. And the last one, in Egypt, salt was used to preserve a dead body or mummification. It means that in Egypt there was the technology of using salt to preserve a dead body from being distracted or ruined by the different bacteria or like that. So these were the uses of salt in pre-colonial African societies. After looking the salt industry, let us see iron industry. By the beginning of the 19th century, most of the African societies were able to produce their own iron. It means that by the beginning of 19th century, the most African societies were able to produce their own iron tools. The famous blacksmiths or iron smelters in Africa was able to produce their own iron. For example, in Tanzania, there were iron deposits in Itewe near Chunya, Linganga, and the Uruguru mountains, which are found in Morogoro. So in these areas, areas whereby iron ores are found specifically in Tanzania. So the famous blacksmiths or the iron smelters in Africa were able to produce their iron on their own capacity. So these were areas, as I have told you, that in Tanzania there is a deposit of iron in Itewe near Chunya, Linganga, and the Uruguru mountains in Morogoro. Also Nubia of Sudan along the River Nile. It means that another area like Nubia of Sudan along the River Nile were also participating in iron working or iron mining or iron industry. Also people along the Futa, the Jalon, and the Niger River in West Africa. These are also areas where iron industry were taking place. Also the Manganja people of Malawi were also producing iron tools or iron equipments. And the Venda people of northern Transvaal in South Africa were also participating in production of iron tools. And the last one is the Mashona of Zambia. It means Mashona people in Zambia were developed the iron industry whereby they produced the different iron tools. So these were the areas which were producing iron tools. Also, there were also deposits in Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Angola, and Zimbabwe. It means that the iron deposits were there in those countries which I have mentioned. In Ethiopia, blacksmiths or iron smelters were not allowed to inherit land or even to intermarry with other people. It means that in Ethiopia, blacksmiths or iron smelters were not allowed to inherit that land which were containing the iron ores or iron deposits, or even to intermarry with other tribe or clan or society which did not such deposits of iron. So let us see the uses of iron. The uses of iron. Iron was used to make agricultural tools. It means that Iron was used to make different agricultural tools which could increase the production of agricultural production or agricultural products. Like hoes, axes, and spears were used in agricultural societies. Another, iron was used to make weapons, for example, spears and swords. To mean that iron was used to make weapons, for example, spears and swords, for defense purpose or defensive purpose. Also, iron was a medium of exchange. Some of people used the iron bars or iron ores as taken when paying bride price. For example, the Skuma in the northern west Tanganyika. It means that iron was used as the medium of exchange. Some people use the iron bars or iron ores. It means iron bars or ores or end ores as taken when paying bride price. For example, Sukuma and Aya tribe in the northern west Tanganyika or Tanzania by today, they are just taking the iron bars or iron ores or iron end ores during the paying of bride price. So that was another use of iron. But other uses of iron is, iron was also a measure of worth. People who had more iron than others were considered worthy. It means that having a lot amount of iron was considered as worth society. So those societies which had more iron than others were considered worthy societies or communities. Another, iron was an important trade commodity that is Maasai traded cattle for iron weapons from the Pale and the Kikuyu. It means that iron was an important commodity during the trading era or trading activities. For example, Maasai traded cattle or cow and goats for iron weapons from the Pale and the Kikuyu. So they attained those iron weapons from the Pale and the Kikuyu, as that iron was important trading commodity. Also, some objects used in religious ceremonies were made of iron. That is, Yoruba and Fon made iron objects to honor Ogun, the god of iron and the war. To mean that some objects used in religious ceremonies were made of iron. To mean that there are some objects that were made of iron and were used in religious ceremonies. For example, in Yoruba and Fon made iron objects to honor their god known as Ogun. That was the god of iron and war. So you can see that how iron was used in pre-colonial African societies. After looking iron industry, let us see copper mining and the processing industries. The production and the use of copper in pre-colonial, not pure, in pre-colonial Africa. In pre-colonial Africa was widely spread. It means that the production and the use of copper in pre-colonial Africa societies were widespread. Pure copper from the earth's surface by 300 BC, the Egyptians were already producing copper. It means that by 300 BC, the Egyptians were already producing copper, and the Igbo as well as Yoruba in Nigeria were also producing copper. Also, Central Kafua River in the Gwai River in Zambia, South Africa, Democratic Republic of Congo, formerly known as Zaire. It means that also in these areas the copper was also already developed. So you can see how, or I mean in which areas or where copper mining was taking place. Let us see the uses of copper. Uses of copper. It is used to make ornaments such as bangles and earrings. For example, Ndebele women wore copper and the brass necklace. Rings are the symbol of representing their husband's wealth. To mean that in some societies they use that copper to make ornaments such as bangles and earrings. For example, Ndebele women wore copper and the brass necklace as well as rings as a symbol of representing their husband's wealth. Another uses of copper used to make pots, pans and other utensils. To mean that copper are used to make pots, pans and the other utensils which are usually in cooking activities or in cookery. Also used to make weapons such as daggers and knives. To mean that copper used to make weapons such as daggers and knives. Also copper bars or bars of copper were used as the medium of exchange and the measure of value. To mean that by that time until now, copper is just used as the medium of exchange. I mean by that time copper or bars of copper was used as the medium of exchange and the measure of value. So that's how copper was used. But now copper is used to make various coins as a medium of exchange. Also the last one, or the last uses of copper was used as a trade commodity. To mean that copper by that time or during the pre-colonial African societies was used as the trade commodity. Gold was one among the first metal to be used in Africa. It was easy to find. That was all about copper. This is another part. So copper was used as a trade commodity during the pre-colonial African societies. Another, it is gold mining. Gold mining was one among of the first metal to be used in Africa. To mean that gold was one among the first metals to be used in Africa. It was easy to find gold near the Earth's surface. To mean that in Africa or during pre-colonial African societies, it was easy to find the gold near the Earth's surface. In most parts of Africa, gold was found in the river bed. You can say that in most parts of Africa, gold was found in the river bed. Gold was obtained by washing gold-bearing rocks, for example, River Sabi and River Zambezi, in Ashanti and Guinea in Ghana and Meloe in Sudan. These are the areas or pre-colonial African areas which are providing gold in large extent, as Ashanti, Guinea in Ghana, Meloe in Sudan, along the river Sabi and the river Zambezi. All these were areas which were providing gold. Let us see the uses of gold. What were the uses of gold in pre-colonial African societies? The first one, it used to make various types of ornaments, for example, rings, earrings, necklaces, and the bracelets made funnel mask for the pharaohs in Egypt. To mean that the gold was used to make various types of ornaments like bangles, earrings, bracelets, necklace, and the mask for the pharaoh or made fanelo mask for the pharaohs in Egypt. Those were all ornaments that made from gold. Another, the use of gold used to make weapons, for example, knives, handles, especially for important rulers. It meant that gold was used to make weapons like knives, especially for important rulers like kings, the chiefs, and the others were owning those gold knives. Another uses of gold was used in making utensils such as plates, cups, and spoons for the rich. It means that gold were used to make utensils in the rich or for the rich families and monarchs or noble families, like plates, cups, and the spoons for the rich. Until now, there is gold plates, gold cups, and gold spoons, which are very expensive. In Egypt, gold was used to make coins. To me, that in Egypt, gold was used to make coins, which were used as the medium of exchange. Also, gold was an important trade commodity in East Africa. The town of Kilwa became prosperous due to gold trade. To mean that gold was the important commodity or trade commodity in East Africa, as the town of Kilwa became the propellers or most popular due to the gold trade that was conducted in Kilwa town. Another use of gold was used as the currency as well as measure of wealth. It means that gold was used as the currency as well as measure of wealth. And the last one, rich people used gold to decorate buildings. It means that once you go in the Paris or the rich people, you may find that their buildings are decorated by using gold. For example, once we look on the Roman Catholic churches, there are different decorations that have been made in their churches by using gold. Even the utensils or equipment or items that are used in religious ceremonies or religious sessions, means the items which are used are made up of gold. So that's how gold was used to decorate buildings. Let us see other handicraft industries that was happened or occurred in pre-colonial African societies. The first one is pottery making. It means the making of pots. It means pottery was practiced in areas where there was clay soil. It means that pottery was practiced in areas where there was clay soil. Famous people were Akamba, Kisii, Batwa, Gisu, and Dipale. These were the famous people in pre-colonial African societies to make pots or pots. Let us see advantages of pottery or uses of pottery. Pots or pottery enables communities to make containers for cooking food. It means that pottery enabled communities to make containers for cooking food. Also produced the containers for storing water, milk, beer, and grains. It means that pottery was also produced or was used. It means the clay soil was used to produce containers for storing water, milk, beer, and grains. Also, pottery produced items or goods for trade. For example, Maasai exchange. For example, Maasai exchange kettle for pottery. It means that the pottery produce items or goods for trade. For example, Maasai were exchanging cattle for pottery items or goods. Also, pottery containers were used. So thus were the uses or advantages of pottery in pre-colonial African societies. So until there, I would like to wind up our session by providing the exercise which you are supposed to perform. And the exercise comprises 3 questions. The first one is defining development. The second one is mention 5 pre-colonial handicraft industries. And the third one is list 4 areas which were famous in salty industry. So until there, I would like to end up our class, and I thank you for watching and listening me attentively from the beginning until the end of our session. I welcome you in the coming session or class in order to proceed learning with us Educare Tanzania. I wish you nice studies from one student for the better achievements. So have a good time. Bye bye.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away, as you fade away.
Yeah, I'm about to fade away, cause every time I wake up I feel like it's Monday. Something's going wrong with all the chemicals up in my brain. All of a sudden I don't look at anything the same way. Gotta build up of my thoughts sitting in an ashtray. I'm sorry that I'm so inconvenient, okay. Just let me be me and I'll stay out of your way. I can see the way you look at me, I'm such a disgrace. I never really asked to